Sarah, thank you so much for joining me again in another excellent conversation all about video production. So I'm super happy that we have this time together here today. And thank you again for giving me some of your time to really dig deeper, to talk about your experience in the world video production. We've met each other. So we originally met at Forest City Film Festival at the networking event. And since then, I've been following your work and the video content that you do, and it's super creative. And so I knew that I would want to have you as a guest here. We spoke recently at the Urban Leagues event. So without further ado, I'd love for you to give yourself an introduction, talk about your company, and yeah, what kind of film and what kind of content you specialize in creating.
Yeah, so I started shooting video about 4 or 5 years ago, and is that too loud? No, you can't hear. Okay, I'm just gonna shut the door.
Yeah, no worries. Turn it up.
We actually have holes in the floor of our house, so if you're standing in the living room, you can see straight up into the office or the bedroom.
Oh, jeez. Wow, careful your step.
No, they're covered, but
Okay.
the sound.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I'm Sarah Fonger, and I started shooting video about 4 or 5 years ago. And before that, I primarily just did photography as a hobby. And I realized that the next step for me, what I wanted to do was video production. So I started to just do some stuff on my own, some events, videos with friends. I created an Instagram account called Girls Who Shred, and it was just, video of my friends biking and all the funny things we got into. So it was really a passion for me. And then I needed to find a way to learn more and become part of a professional environment. So I started working as a real estate photographer for a production company. So I would get to go on video shoots and I would get to learn a lot. Even though I was just doing photography, as my job most of the time, I would assist on those video shoots, and that was really valuable to me. So since then, other things have happened in my life, but it's always kind of been on and off, doing video for myself, trying to find ways to make money at it. And then recently, I just kind of started my own business. I was in Africa just before COVID, from January to March, shooting a bike touring trip. I was working for a bike touring company. And then when I got home and COVID hit, I started shooting weddings, and then I got into making videos for organizations. So as a business owner and shooting video on my own, that's been something that's happened very recently, even though I've been doing this for a number of years.
Oh, that's interesting to know. So, I knew about your trip to Africa, with the bike touring company, and let's dive into that, 'cause that's pretty cool. Not many people have experienced that, and that was a pretty cross-continental trip, if I believe so. Right? I think I checked that out on your website. So, talk to me a bit more about that trip and what you learned, and just kind of where you went from where to where.
So originally the trip was supposed to be Cairo to Cape Town. That's what they do every year at the same time. But because of COVID, we actually ended up coming in March. So it ended up being Cairo to Mount Kilimanjaro, Tanzania. This is where we ended up stopping.
Yeah, that's just that. Yeah, that's still pretty intense, especially because you're on bikes, you're on push bikes, right? So for you, what was, you got to travel pretty light, I imagine, or did you have camera gear in a van? Was there someone who was driving? What were some of the gear that you had on that trip that is
Yeah.
packing light gear? What was your camera bag during that trip?
Yeah, so we actually had vehicles with us at all times. So we had 3 vehicles. We had a pickup truck, a van that we used for lunches that only had gear for like lunches and things like that, like a Sprinter van. And then we had this very like massive, large truck, like somewhere between a transport truck and an adventure vehicle. It was just very big. And so in that, we stored all of our personal gear. So the people working on the trip, like we had a chef, we had a nurse, we had people, just extra staff members that helped out with things like that, the drivers of the vehicles. And so we had the gear of all of the participants in the back as well as our own gear. So at some points on the trip, you know, there might be 25 people or there might be 30 people because people come in and out. Like not everyone who pays to be on the trip stays for the full like 4 months. They might be there for 2 weeks or 1 month, depending on what they signed up for. So I actually didn't get a good as deal with luggage as some other my coworkers did because I had so much camera gear. So I had 2 duffel bags, one of my personal gear and one was just camera gear. So we're allowed 1 duffel bag for like day use and 1 duffel bag for long-term use. So that's stuff you don't access on the regular basis. But my extra bag, my long-term bag was just full of camera gear. So I traveled maybe in some cases lighter than I should have. But I had my like my Ronin M stabilizer with me, which was probably overkill because I didn't use it a lot, just because it's really intimidating for people in general, let alone people who don't necessarily see that kind of gear all the time, for you to just come up to them with that, you know? So that was something that I didn't really use so much. I went handheld more often than not.
Interesting. And you know, it kind of makes me want to tap into another question there, and it's something that I personally am not always, you know, I'm not the most comfortable doing this as well. And even with your wedding background, like this is where I had to do it more recently, and it was, yeah, just a bit like uncomfortable, which is filming people at like events or, you know, during things like this, and, you know, people like subjects on camera who are not actors or actresses, and be like, hey, I'm like doing something, or, you know, like you're being paid by an organization or a company and you're filming like, you know, participants or people there who don't necessarily, you know, they didn't necessarily agree to be on camera, or maybe, I'm sure in your case they like probably had to sign some sort of consent. And so for something like that, like what is kind of your approach reaching out to people, like, hey, like do you kind of try to get more candidates where like they don't necessarily notice you at first? Do you come up and ask them and then, you know, just act natural? Or do you, you know, is it more of like a fly on the wall, or do you come and tell them to act natural but then you go to that position? Or do you like get them to be like, hey, hi, right? Like what's generally your approach for filming kind of subjects who are not necessarily like higher talent?
Yeah, before I get into that, I just want to talk about, that's something I've struggled with for so long. It can be so awkward and uncomfortable. And I've struggled with confidence and that sort of thing. And you have to have so much confidence to just go up to someone and be like, oh, will you be on camera? Or I don't know if everyone struggles with this, but it was something that was so incredibly awkward for me. And I actually, part of my goals with the Africa trip was to get over that. I thought, I'm going to be around all these people. This is my job. I have no way around it. This is what I have to do. And at the end of 4 months, I'm going to be comfortable with it. And then I'll be better at weddings and corporate stuff. And actually, that is what happened. It did work out that way. A lot of the time, I would set up an interview. I would have a topic in mind, and I would set up an interview with someone on the trip, and we would talk about different things, but I would have that topic in mind and an idea of where the video was going. And then I would get video footage of them that supported that. So some of this stuff might be staged, like I might get a close-up of them picking up a water bottle or stuff like that. But for the most part, I was just on the outside of the whole group, kind of filming things that were going on that was interesting. Because sometimes the actual filming of just filming people, I guess, randomly or all the time, that led into then, okay, well, this topic has come up and that's what I'm going to make a video on because I have footage that supports it. So I think the best footage happens when you communicate with your subject and you let them know what you want to get out of it. Because I find when you're trying to follow someone around, you're always 2 steps behind. You don't know when they're going to pick something up. You don't know what direction they're walking. The footage is never going to be as good, in my opinion, as if, you say walk this way. On the other side of that, though, if you're just filming them all the time, you're going to get stuff that you wouldn't have thought of. It's kind of candid in a way, but it's also posed in a way. Like, you might have someone come up and get food from the chef's table and they're acting as they normally would because they had to get food, but you're just in the right spot and you know what they're going to be doing when they're doing it.
Yeah, it makes total sense, right? And it's interesting, that whole idea of being 2 steps behind. If you don't, if there isn't a game plan, then you're kind of at the whim. And sure, there's an element of spontaneity there, but especially if you're on a tight time schedule and things like this, and if it's in, if you have a certain shoot or a scene in mind, 100% take that. But then when when you're talking about the cafeteria or people just maybe sitting around a fire, right? These are more habitual routines that having, say, a guided script or some sort of plan doesn't even need to take in place. It's more, say, if you're on the go and things like that, those type of shots you really want to have control over, versus more of those habits and those routines that can be a bit more spontaneous. There can be more spontaneity in that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely pros and cons to both methods.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been years that I've tried to get good at just going up to people I don't even know and being like, hey, can I film you doing this? Like, I've had friends come with me because I needed their support. And I told them, I need to practice this. I'm bad at it. I need to get better at it. And they would be beside me and they would do some of the talking. And I would just go up to people at festivals and say, can I get a shot of you pouring this or doing that? And it felt so uncomfortable and it took so much energy to get myself to do that. But now I feel super comfortable doing that.
Wow. Was there a moment on your trip in Africa where it was like an aha, like, oh, like now this may, like, why didn't I ever see it in this way before? Or did you think it was more of like a gradual mindset shift?
I don't think I really realized until I got back. Like, I think it was very gradual. The trip was very difficult for me for like a number of reasons. Like, we're camping outside, you're working every day, you're getting up at 5 a.m., you're going to bed after everything's done. Like, I wasn't just a videographer. I helped the chef. I rode my bike sometimes at the back, like sweep. We all had to ride sweep certain days. And so I was just perpetually exhausted. And I didn't really have much time to think about anything on that trip. I was just trying to get through it. There's so many times I didn't actually think I could get through it. I was like, I don't know how to quit this trip, but I think I have to because I don't have any energy left. And so it didn't really hit me until after I got back, until I started like doing a little bit of YouTube videos and shooting some weddings, and then getting into more stuff with organizations, that I really was able to see this like gradual transition that I made. And now when I look back at who I was before I went to Africa, and like professionally and personally, I can't believe how far I've come in certain regards.
Wow, that's such a crazy trip though as well. So congratulations to you for even embarking on that on the first place. That's that's awesome. And it makes me think, and it kind of sparked another question in my mind, which is, when we talk about that feeling of, being uncomfortable approaching people, and whether or not it's even subjects to film or it's new clients, right? Like, I think it kind of stems back from, to me personally, it's almost a fear of rejection, like, right? And I think a lot of small businesses can they have this mindset where they don't go out, they're not that active, people don't like doing sales is uncomfortable, you're going to face rejection. And so for you now, having come back home, taking more of the entrepreneurial route, like, what has been, say, one remedy for you, that's helped you, say, overcome that fear now, fear of rejection, when you are, say, outsourcing and looking for new leads and new business?
I think one of the hardest things for me has been confidence, like ever since the beginning. And that's because of a couple things. But I was always worried about how my videos looked. And I know people would tell me, like, that's amazing, that looks really cool, but I didn't really believe it. And now when I look back at the stuff when I was shooting at the beginning, some of it I'm like, that's really bad. But other stuff I'm like, wow, like that was really good. And at the time I thought it wasn't that great.
Yeah.
So I think, because of Africa and because of the things that came after it, I became more confident in my skills and my abilities. And I then was more able to market myself to people because I saw more value in myself. Like, I still look at my work, and like everyone deals with this. You look at your work and you're like, that's not that great. But it's because you've looked at it 50, 100 times. You've like dissected every inch of it. And most people, they're going to watch it once and they're going to think it looks really good. Like all the little nitpicky things you see, chances are most people are never going to see those things. So I think just understanding that and becoming more confident in my actual work has made it easier for me to say I'm a videographer, because I even had a difficulty saying that before I went to Africa, that I was a videographer. And now it's just a fact, like I'm a videographer. And so I'm much more comfortable telling people that. And when I meet people, I tell them I'm a videographer, and that, I don't know if that directly leads to work, but then people have that in their mind and they might think of me for a wedding or a job down the line, which has happened. So I think for me, it's just being confident in my work and being able to like put that outward and not be so concerned about what people will think. I've never been super worried about failure because obviously it's uncomfortable. No one wants to fail, but as a business owner and a creative business owner, you're definitely going to fail. Like that's just an inevitable fact. So failing sucks, but I would say I try and be okay with failure. It was just like the confidence part that I really had an issue with.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, it's nice to hear you say that, because I think that'll resonate with a lot of people. I think a lot of people struggle, I still struggle, right? Like, we're inundated by people who are doing more and doing big things and who are posting more, right? And we're not, we're held back. And so, I think there's really the idea of confidence and idea of being comfortable and knowing that, you're not going to, every video is not going to be a banger, and that's okay. Like, some videos are more corporate in nature and maybe don't appeal to what you want to do. But to me, it kind of comes into the whole idea of imposter syndrome, right? And, being confident with where you're at, what you're able to do, and knowing that, and say, probably pricing, what I like to say is price a little bit above that, right? You probably shouldn't price what you're worth. You should probably price a bit more. Because, fake it till you make it mentality, right? And so, like, for you with imposter syndrome, kind of what's been a way that you've been able to say, find that, like, is that something you deal with? And if you do, like, where do you find your sense of inner creativity to kind of push, past the noise of everything that's out there?
I think imposter syndrome is something that a lot of people deal with. And I would argue that almost every creative person at some time feels like they're a hack like their work isn't that good. They don't know what they're doing. They're just faking it. And I was feeling like this for many years. You know, I'd look at my work and I would say, this isn't that good. Like, I'm not that great of a videographer. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to get clients. I don't know how to do any of this. And the truth is that no one else really does either. And I think for me, the first step was understanding what I was dealing with. Like, I didn't know that it had a name. I didn't know that this was something that everyone really dealt with. I thought it was just me. And I watched a YouTube video by one of my favorite YouTubers, Danny Gervais or Gervais. I don't know how to pronounce it exactly, but he has a whole video on imposter syndrome, and his work is incredible. And so when I heard him say that he dealt with that, it really started to make more sense for me, I guess, because I didn't know how someone who was creating that level of work could look at it and have confidence issues or think it wasn't that good. And then I talked to other people, and a lot of other people feel the same way. So I think my way of getting through it is just understanding that it's a real thing. It's something that everyone deals with. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad artist or you don't know what you're doing. And if I was in the same position again, or like advice for someone else, it would be to have conversations with other people so that you understand that you're not alone and that the people around you are experiencing the same thing. And then you can start to move past it. And I think I started to move past it just by understanding that if I viewed my work 100 times, I was going to find these little details, and to try and look at my work like someone who's just viewing it for the first time. And so this can be like hit or miss, like comparing yourself to other people's work. It's not always good, but if you can look at your work and say, like, I'm as good as anybody else, then you can kind of see that, I don't know, your work isn't bad. Like, I guess it's kind of confusing.
No, I mean that makes sense to me, right? Like it's all about so I it's all about kind of assessing where you're at and what you've been able to accomplish, and not necessarily, you know, pitting that against other people's accomplishments, because we all, you know, we all go at our own pace. We all have our own skill sets and our own person, you know, lived experiences. And so, um, yeah, it like I know I think that's really valuable, and I'll definitely will link to that video. And you know, I kind of want to tap into something on a similar line here, which is, you know, obviously being a female, the industry can be, there's a lot of male videographers. It can be a male dominated sector. Like, would you say that um, some of that doubt ever feels like, you know, because of your sex, you don't have, say, a place, you know, in the sector? And has that been kind of like a fear that you've been able to overcome and be like, you know what, no, like as a woman, like I'm going to, like, I deserve a seat at this table. I deserve a chance at that, you know, that quote, that request for a quote and things like that. Like, has that ever been some, you know, kind of a fear that you faced?
I think something that I struggled with a lot in the beginning, and it actually was the Forest City Film Festival when I met you, that it actually became really clear to me. And I realized that I was mostly coming in contact with male videographers and male filmmakers, and that's not saying that there aren't like lots of female videographers out there. It can be quite male dominated at times. And I think the Forest City Film Festival, I realized that it wasn't my work that it was holding me back. It was my view on my work that was holding me back. And I think this is all generalization. So
That's powerful though. Even that realization, right?
the realization was that a lot of male people that I was coming into contact with, they were very outwardly confident with their work, and they were in a way saying like, this is me, this is my work, it's amazing. not always amazing, but I feel like men are better at outwardly showing confidence, even if maybe inwardly they still have doubts. But outwardly, they might be better at saying, I'm amazing, watch this, I'm so good. And I think women especially tend to struggle with that. We're more quietly in the background, like maybe watch our work, like maybe it's okay. And I know it's not like that for every single person, but I think a lot of times we just don't outwardly present ourselves the same way. So I realized that I didn't need to work on making my work better. I needed to work on marketing myself better and almost thinking like a man. I know all of this is a generalization, and generalizations aren't always great, but I told myself I needed to think like a man, and I needed to believe that I was amazing, and I needed to be able to outwardly present that to other people. Because I think a lot of times if you don't present yourself that way, people discount you. And I felt discounted a lot of the time. And I mean, I was coming in contact with men a lot, so I don't know if this is just like how I was feeling in that moment, but I felt like because I couldn't outwardly say I'm awesome, my work is awesome, people would just kind of like brush over me a little bit more. And I felt like women had more of a difficulty with saying like outwardly confident. Yeah. I also feel like sometimes men talk down to you for no reason when you're a female. And the more confident you are and the more that you say, I deserve to be here. And just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that you can treat me any different than you would a man.
Yeah, so true. Is there any like takeaway? Is there any like, I mean, we've of course covered so much already, and feel free if you're like to rehash ideas. But is there any kind of piece of advice that you would maybe give that now that you almost wish you knew before you started that you would share with upcoming female videographers or people in the film and TV sector?
I would say anyone that's going into that sort of industry would be just to talk to people or try and put yourself around people that have been there instead of asking advice from people that haven't been there. Because I got so many negative comments and so many people saying, you're probably not going to make it. You're probably not going to end up making money. Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why are you doing this? And the reality is you're probably going to get a lot of that from people that don't understand. But it's obvious that you can make money making videos. It's very lucrative. You can make a lot of money doing that. People are always looking for videos, businesses, couples. There's just tons and tons of opportunity. And I think once you surround yourself with people that have been there or going through the same thing, then you're not, hearing those negative comments. I also think just really understanding that what you're feeling, other people have felt too. And getting into any industry is difficult. Any creative industry is very difficult. And just to generally be easy on yourself and take it one step at a time. There's no one way to become a business owner or a creative business owner or a videographer. And that's why, I can't give you like the special formula that's going to make you money or get you more clients. But if someone says like, you need to do this, this, and this, the reality is you can do it so many different ways. You don't have to follow any person's opinion or idea of where you need to be or how you need to do it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that was really, really sound advice, and I really like that. And it definitely can be challenging, but you're right. Like there's so much business opportunity out there. That's why I'm super excited to be having this season to talk with other filmmakers like yourself. So kind of coming close to wrapping things up here, how can people get a hold of you, Sarah? like, what's your website, what's your social media? Let's just, create a bit of space for you to be able to share ways that people can reach you and follow your work.
Yeah, so I just recently launched my like corporate video website, and that's springbankcreatives.com. And then all my wedding stuff is on Through Pine Films. I'm gonna start over. I just launched my corporate video website, which is springbankcreatives.com, and then all of my wedding work is on throughpinefilms.com. I also can be reached on Instagram at Sarah Fonger. And if you want to check out my really early work that I did, that is on Instagram at Girls Who Shred with a U and 2 Zs.
Amazing. That's that's fun. It reminds me of a girl who I met in Montreal who had their sticker on my laptop. I think they're called Shred Queens or something like that. And yeah, there's just like a bunch of snowboarders from Quebec. Really, really fun people. So that, yeah, thank you. I just want to acknowledge all the great work that you're doing, Sarah, and the fact that able to give me this time to share more about your experiences and your insights and some of the fears you had and how you're able to conquer those. I think a lot of people are going to find value in this episode. So 2 questions left. Was there anything that I didn't bring up, or something that you just were reflecting on kind of prior to this interview that you wanted to chat about with me?
I'm gonna have to think about that.
Yeah, no worries. We can come back to that one. So the next question that I had for you is, what does creativity mean to you?
I think creativity means to me that you get to follow whatever is inside of you. I guess, like, for me, I'm not just a videographer. I draw, I paint, I was trying to learn the guitar at some point. Creativity is so hard to explain, but it's just the ability to make something that didn't exist before and be able to put what you feel on the inside outwardly for other people to see. And creativity has gotten me through so many difficult times in my life. Like, I don't really know where I would be without the ability to write or draw. I mean, like, there was a point in my life where my parents had just passed away and I was dealing with so many difficult things. And I started a blog and I wrote my feelings out on a blog and I drew all the time. And I don't think I would have been able to get through that time without being able to write those things out and share them with other people. And I mean, that's difficult in itself because you're telling other people about really difficult things that happened, but it helped me so much. And I think, like, creativity has gotten me through areas of depression and anxiety, and I think that it does that for other people as well. So creativity definitely means a lot to me, and I think there's a lot of different ways that it can be executed.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I think that idea, I really love that. Just like making something out of nothing, then taking what we feel internally and putting that into the observable universe in a tangible, physical, or even digital way, so that these ideas and thoughts and moods and emotion can be absorbed and go from being such like a signified concept to you as the signifier to that receiver, that someone who's decoding that message, right? Like, I think that's key kind of to the element of creativity, and that's what we do with cameras, right? So amazing. Coming back to that second last question, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about, any upcoming projects even that you wanted to share?
I guess for me, I'm trying to create a YouTube channel where I post more regularly. Started working on it in March last year and just lost the time to work on it. And I'm in between projects right now, so I'm trying to build up some videos that I can post throughout the next couple months. And I think that's really important to me because it allows me the ability to maybe create more freedom for myself in the future, uh, being able to spend more time on projects that I want to make for myself as opposed to projects that I'm making for clients or people that are hiring me to make something for them. So I think that's really important. I had a video that I made last March that just continually kept getting views, and that kind of sparked me to be like, this is something that I should keep working on. Just because I don't have very many subscribers right now doesn't mean that over the next 5 years I can't build something that's going to be useful for me in the future.
Yeah. What's your YouTube? What's your channel?
My channel is my name, Sarah Fonger, as well.
Cool. I'll give you a sub. It's and you know, I know we're a bit over time here, but last point I want to make is that's interesting. Like when you talk about wanting that freedom to make more for yourself rather than the clients that you work with. And I think a lot of us idealize that, but it's a lot harder to actualize that, because when you're making things for the client, you know, when they are giving you a deadline, and they're giving you money, you're like, well, I can do that. I'm, you know, it's almost like there's that other that has these expectations for you. But when you're trying to do it yourself, like it's harder to be self-motivating. And then one client comes up and you're like, oh, that's going in the back, you know, that's a back burner now. So like when I was really trying to focus on creating my documentary, like I was dealing with that a ton. And what actually really helped me, you know, and it was honestly like a lot of the things we've talked about, it was an imposter syndrome. I was like, why, like, who's going to watch my, you know, so many documentaries out there. Why do they care to watch mine? But it was just like finding the time to do it and to be motivated. And this like task that I knew was before me was such like this overarching mission that I had to do. And it was so daunting. So I told one of my mentors, I was like, listen, David, I need you to be an accountability coach. I need you to be an absolute prick to me every week. Because at that time we were chatting weekly. I was like, if I'm not doing the tasks that I'm telling you now, that, you know, we really broke it down in what are actionable items, what are digestible steps that I could be doing for those greater actions in terms of reaching, you know, project goals. You know, this is the act one, right? It needs to all these clips. And but honestly, just having him being like, did you do what you were supposed to be doing, was really, it was very self-motivating, because I knew, well, self-motivating, but also like, you know, David's motivating me because I knew at the end of the week, if I didn't have that done, like I felt guilty coming up to those meetings and be like, sorry, man, like I didn't get around to it this week, whatever, right? He'd be like, dude, and I'd be like, I know, right? So I think that's really important. And I do tell that to a lot of people, is finding that accountability coach, especially on passion projects, because at the end of the day, yes, we have to learn how to have that self-discipline and that confidence and to just do those things. But having someone there holding you to it really does help. Yeah. Anyways, thanks so much, Sarah. Yeah, I wanted to share that to finish this off. But yeah, absolute pleasure again speaking with you as always. Whenever we get a chance, it's always fun and really insightful. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time that you've given me here today on the Creative Kind podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.